Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel, Kay Reads and Crochets. Today's video is inspired by something that Carrie Can Read just posted, where she was talking about the where my lore started trend that's kind of going around on Instagram and how it reminded her of like old school booktube tags and like challenges. I love Carrie Can Read. I think she's a phenomenal booktuber. I trust every recommendation she ever gives, and so I wanted to participate. I had a lot of fun writing this script, and so hopefully you guys get to learn a little bit more about me and we get to have a fun little trip down memory lane. But first, 2025 book blanket update. This is all up to date. All 7 books that I have read this year, which is not as many as I would have liked to. But if you want more in-depth reviews on all of the books on my book blanket, you can look at my TikTok. I'm going to be posting those there. So let's get into where my lore started. The first book that I remember reading by myself is probably the Harry Potter series, the first like substantial book. I was born in 1994, so I was very much swept up in the hype. It was a huge part of my childhood. I have different feelings about the series now. The story and the world itself will always hold a special place in my heart, but I try to not actively give She Who Must Not Be Named any of my finances. I try not to give her any money. I feel like my mom started reading the Harry Potter books to me, but she's not a fantasy reader. Like, she does not like fantasy books, fantasy movies. And so when she realized that like I was reading it by myself just fine, she just kind of let me go. I also had the audiobooks on cassette tape. That's old school. I'm pretty sure I was in first grade when I started reading the books, because that's when the movies were coming out. Probably the first 4 books had come out, because I remember going to the midnight release of the 5th book, and then I also did the midnight release for the 6th and 7th books. I also remember reading the Magic Tree House books a lot as a kid. My first grade teacher read us the one about Jack and Annie going to the moon, and I was absolutely enthralled. So I went through those books real quick, and I still love them. I still think they're great kids books. I still think that they're great, you know, informational books. I feel like I learned a lot about the world through those books, as well as like had a wonderful time reading them. So I think those books are great. I was definitely a Hermione in elementary school. I was a teacher's pet. I was a know-it-all. I was a little bit annoying. I was everything that people hated about Hermione specifically, but I loved it. As I got older, I also read a lot of the Deltora Quest books, which I feel like were not super popular here in the US, but I feel like I've heard that they're super popular in other English-speaking countries. I think maybe the author was Australian, and so they're really big in Australia. I don't know, but I also loved that series, and I really loved the character Jasmine. She loved animals. She was kind of a badass. She was everything I wanted to be, but I didn't think I was actually able to be, if that makes sense. My elementary school comfort book was definitely Deltora Quest. I read and reread those books so often. In fact, I still have my childhood copies of the books, and like you can see you can see how well loved these books are. I mean, the corners are like super damaged, the pages are like really yellowed. These went everywhere with me. I read them so often. I don't know if these would count as comfort books, and I also feel like this was in middle school, but there were books that I would like continuously check out of the library. Like, I would get them and then I would renew them and renew them and renew. I would just carry them around for like literally months. There was one really old book, like old, like still had like a fabric bound cover. It was all about like luck and good luck charms. I don't know why I liked that book so much, but like I'm also really into crystals now, so I feel like there's some connection there. There was another book that I used to take out from the library all the time, and it was a nonfiction book on knights and like medieval Europe, all of the like courtly rules and like the jousting. I definitely had a Middle Ages hyperfixation, and I don't know if my love for fantasy is to blame for that hyperfixation, or like the other way around, you know? I don't know. I loved libraries as a kid. Any library I ever stepped foot in, I loved. When I was in elementary school, I used to go to the library first thing in the morning. Like when everybody was getting dropped off and going to their classrooms, I would make a pit stop at the library so that I could say hi to the librarian because I loved her. And also because I had probably finished the books that I had taken out and wanted to drop them off and quickly grab some new books. We had this beautiful library at our elementary school. There was like this little circular bench bookshelf kind of a thing. Like it was bookshelves on the outside, benches on the inside, and it made this little alcove, and that's where we did all of our story times. Magical. I remember that all of the bookshelves around that little alcove were all the picture books. And until you got to like second grade, you could only take out books from the picture book section, and that made me so mad because I wanted to go. There was so much in the library and I was only allowed to look at the picture books, and I was reading Harry Potter off on my own. Like, let me look at the books, please. Let me just look at all of the books. Our middle school library was even better. I mean, it was literally something out of Beauty and the Beast. Had these gorgeous tall bookshelves, super high ceilings, beautiful, these gorgeous big long tables. Was there a staircase? I feel like there was a staircase. Like I think it went up to storage, but like I'm pretty sure there was a staircase. I have dreams about this library. I would spend all of my study halls in the library. Like I would go to study hall, get a pass, go to the library, and that's where I would spend my study hall. Loved that library. Our local library, like our town library, was also really, really great. My mom would take me every other weekend or so. Support your local libraries. Support your local libraries. Please and thank you. It hasn't. I still love fantasy books. I still love learning new things. I love love stories. I fear that 85% of my personality was formed by the books that I read as a child. I was very much inspired and encouraged to read by my school and my family. Like I said, my mom used to take me to the library all the time. I feel like I loved reading because like my mom always read to me. No matter what we were doing, we made sure that every night she would read me a story before I went to bed. We'd go to the grocery store and she'd like read all the labels and the signs. Like she made sure that I was exposed to words and I was reading. That was such a huge factor into my love of reading that personally I don't remember learning how to read. I just read. My mom told me a story recently about how like one day my dad said to her like, you know, she's reading road signs. You know, she's reading like street signs. Like she's reading. I was like 4 years old. As a child of the 90s and 2000s, there were so many good reading programs that were implemented in school that encouraged reading and motivated kids to read, and truly I miss them. I miss them so much. I was fiercely competitive as a child, and so the Pizza Hut Book It program where you had to like read a certain number of books, and when you read a certain number of books you would get a coupon for a pizza, that was right up my alley. Right up my alley. I think my mom and I went to Pizza Hut at least once a week so that I could turn in my coupon for my little personal pan pizza because I loved reading and I loved competing. I also had a teacher in middle school who made every Friday SSR Friday, Sustained Silent Reading, which is exactly what it sounds like. Basically, we just read for the entire class period. It was the highlight of my week every week. I loved that class because on Friday we had uninterrupted reading time. She had these big beautiful like windowsills, and I would always ask, can I sit on the windowsill? Because it overlooked our courtyard, and I would just sit on the windowsill and read my book for 45 minutes. It was the best day of the week. I loved Fridays. I feel very fortunate to have grown up in an environment that prioritized reading, and it's something that I think has made me who I am today, and I love that and I greatly appreciate it. Recently, I've been wanting to return to the Gemma Doyle trilogy. I read this as a teenager and absolutely loved it. The first book is A Great and Terrible Beauty, and then Rebel Angels and The Sweet Far Thing. My friend got me this at our book basket exchange at our readathon, and then somebody else sent me these in a reading group, like an online book club that I'm a part of. We do Amazon wishlist exchanges every month, and somebody sent me these. So I have the whole trilogy. I'm very excited to dive back into it. It's about a group of girls in, I believe, Edwardian England who kind of stumble into this world of magic. And I love it. I think about this book on a weekly basis. Like, I think about this series regularly to this day. So very excited to jump back into that world. Probably would be Deltora Quest again. Maybe even Aragon, although I haven't finished the Aragon series. I think one of the reasons that I love Deltora Quest so much is, again, because I loved the character Jasmine. And the reason that I loved her so much is because of the role that she played in the story. Like, she never felt shoehorned into just being a side character just because she was a girl. I feel like when you get a lot of these like heroic trios in YA novels, you get a boy, a girl, and a mentor. Usually the mentor is somebody a little bit older. We do have that in this case. Leaf is the boy, Jasmine is the girl, Barda is the mentor. You know that the boy and the girl are gonna get together at the end. You know it. It's predictable. And like, that's fine. But sometimes it feels like the girl is only there for the boy to fall in love with. And that always like frustrated me as a kid. I was reading Deltora Quest. There was one book where they go into this like competition. When you go into the competition, you're thinking, okay, Leaf is the main character. He's the boy. He's gonna win the competition. But he gets kicked out in like the semifinals. Like, he gets beaten, he loses. Jasmine ends up winning. And I was like, she's her own person. Yes, I know that in the end they're gonna fall in love and get together and have a happily ever after, but she still has her own story. I loved that. I've been chasing that high since I was 10 years old. Let's be realistic. The Book Thief by Marcus Zusak. I think I've talked about this book before, but I read this for the first time when I was in middle school. We had a joint project with our ELA teacher and our social studies teacher. We were learning about World War II and the Holocaust, and so for the ELA portion of the project, we had to read, I think it was at least 2 books that either reference, talk about directly, or take place during the Holocaust. She gave us a whole bunch of options. We had like a month to read the books and write the report. And I just remember looking at this table, and she had The Giver, she had Night, she had The Diary of Anne Frank, and she was telling us about all of these books and like, are they fiction, are they nonfiction, all of these different things. And she held up The Book Thief and she said something to the effect of, this is the longest book that I have available, so not a lot of people choose to read this one. But I ended up absolutely falling in love with this book. This is another book that I think about on a regular basis. I constantly find myself recommending it to people. This is one of the first books that like genuinely made me cry. And I'm not a person that cries at books very frequently. There was also a movie that was made out of this book. And like, it's a decent movie, but it's not a great adaptation. So I recommend reading the book first, or just only reading the book. I was really into Dan Brown books as a kid, specifically his Robert Langdon novels. Like, I loved The Da Vinci Code. I loved Angels and Demons at like 11 years old. Like, I should not have been reading those books at 11 years old. And again, decent movies, not great adaptations, but whatever. This was at a time when the Da Vinci Code book was like, I mean, it was controversial, and like that's why it became popular. And I remember my dad had a copy. I must have just picked it up one afternoon and read it. Not like a weird book in and of itself, but weird for it to be a favorite book of a 10-year-old. Realistically, 13-year-old me would choose Hogwarts. I wouldn't choose Hogwarts now, but realistically, 13-year-old me would choose Hogwarts. Maybe I would also choose Alagasia from Aragon because dragons. I'm a simple girl. I don't know right now what world I would choose to live in because I know that I do not have the skills to survive in a fantasy world. Maybe I'd choose the Shire. Yeah, send me to Hobbiton, but send me to Hobbiton like post yeeting the ring into Mount Doom. I would also love Rohan. If I had read Dance of Thieves as a teenager, I would probably have a tattoo related to this book. I don't know how I know that that's the truth, but that's the truth. I loved that book. It was the series that got me back into reading. I think it would have been a perfect fit for me as a teenager. Fantasy world, love story, political intrigue. It's all of the things that I would have loved. I always find myself recommending it for any like YA fantasy fans or like fantasy fans who don't want a lot of spice or who are like really interested in the political intrigue aspect of fantasy books. I think it's great. I think people should read it. So this is also me just recommending to you Dance of Thieves. And that wraps up my Where My Lore Started book tag. I had a lot of fun with this. I loved sharing some of my lore with all of y'all, and I hope you had as much fun as I did. And until next time, I hope you have a great day. I hope you get to do something that you love, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!